Come join Greg and Richard right here on Talking Red. Hello and welcome to Talking Reds, a Nottingham Forest podcast. I'm your host, Greg Oram, along with my fellow Forest fanatic from across the Atlantic, Richard Spray.
Okay, let's go.
Wow, these are very nice. That's fine.
Richard Spray, Richard Spray, Richard Spray. Richard Spray, Richard Spray, Richard Spray. Richard Spray, Richard Spray, Richard Spray. Why aren't you tackling him?
I'm fine. Totally fine. I don't know why it's coming out all loud and squeaky, because really, I'm fine.
We have just re-energized the Forest machine! So I've seen more tackle on Pornhub! Bloody hell!
I keep thinking to myself, you know what? I won't get involved with too much of an intro today. And I start building something, and it just kind of gathers legs and ends up being whatever it is. So, Richard Spray, Richard Spray, Richard Spray. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah. Re-energizing the Forest machine, right, Steve? Yeah, we can never go wrong with a little Chris Aylmer, to start the show, because you got that beautiful Irishman. He's such a great person to listen to. So much passion, so much joy, so much love for the club. And so, yeah, thank you for that. That's absolutely amazing. And we continue to get so much mileage out of Mark Goldbridge with those sound bites. It's excellent.
That's never going to stop.
Well done.
Never going to stop.
Yeah.
Our good friends at Forest All Over signed off this week to end 5 years of weekly Forest content, and we salute Chris and Matt and look forward to their occasional special editions that may pop up randomly here and there. In fact, we are big fans of all the podcasts and channels that provide regular stimulating content on our beloved club. Unlike the others, you'll know that we have a regular eclectic bunch of brilliant contributors here on Talking Reds as well. But our special guest series has always been a firm favourite of ours, as it gives us a great opportunity for any Forest fan to come onto the channel and have their say. We enjoy spending time getting to know each guest, as we believe it unites our fan base and brings us all that little bit closer. Today's guest is a man who is Nottingham through and through. He has represented the people of Wollaton West as a local councillor for a number of years, and has stood up repeatedly for his community on a number of matters, making a difference where possible. He is a huge fan of Nottingham Forest and has been writing his own blog called Following Forest since January. Started as a bit of fun, perhaps, and now it's well and truly on to its 15th edition, and it's a way to talk about the challenge for Europe, amongst other things. We're delighted to spend the next hour or so then on this special episode, the one with Steve Battlemuch. Steve, how you doing? Good morning. Nice to have you with us.
Yeah, thanks, Greg, and thanks, Richard. And thanks for getting my name right. It's a bit of a mouthful sometimes. People can't seem to get their heads around it, but it's quite simple. But you won't believe what I've been called over the years.
I'm surprised. I think Steve Battlemuch is pretty straightforward in my eyes, but there we go. It's great to have you with us. So look, we're going to jump straight into it. We always ask, as you know, about, as our first question, your own Forest story. So take it away. Tell us the hows and the whys and the wherefores of you becoming a Forest fan, Steve.
Okay, well, I think, as you said, maybe in the intro, that Nottingham born and bred. In fact, lived here all my life, worked here all my life. Little known fact is my uncle played for Forest in the 50s, although very much a bit part player, played left back for one season and was in the reserves for about 7 or 8 seasons, and finished his Forest career the year before we won the FA Cup in 59. So I don't think I can take too much from that, other than I was told about it as a kid when I was born in the 60s. But I was taken to my first game at age 5 in 1967, Forest Man U. Again, I have no memory of that game other than sitting on the wall at the Trent end as soon as the gates opened. I think that was my sister thought best to get me in and get me right down the front. I have a strong memory of a game in '74, which was the first, I think, FA Cup match played on a Sunday. And it was called the Duncan McKenzie match because I think he scored a hat trick. I think it was like 4-1 or 4-2 against Man City. And there was so many people in the ground that they moved the kids over the walls. And I was, what was that, 74? I was about 11 at that point. So I remember seeing that from the running track at the City Ground, which is incredible to think these days that would happen. But really, it started in earnest in a way that you could write books about, which is my first ever season ticket as a 14, 15-year-old was 77, 78. So what a season to start going every week, taken by a bloke up the road because there's nobody really to go with in my family. And, once you see us win the league and then win the European Cup, and again, it just stays with you, doesn't it?
It's interesting you talk about that as you finished, because my next kind of question in was really to see what memories you have of Clough and Europe and that era, because I was thinking before we spoke and before I knew anything, I thought Steve seems like he's probably coming into the club as a young person around that kind of time. I didn't realize it was quite so bang on. So you kind of hit the nail on the head in terms of the glory years. So tell us about that. I mean, we see the pictures and the images. There's the fantastic I Believe in Miracles film that Johnny Owen produced that takes you back and transports you back. Are those memories still as vivid as ever for you?
Yeah, I mean, that film was brilliant, by the way, in terms of when it came out in the anniversary year, which Faraz did nothing to celebrate, and then Johnny brought that film out. I mean, absolutely tremendous. But I mean, my memories of that time was that, I was growing up as a working class lad in Bilborough, and all my mates, would go down Forest. You would pay on the gate, you would literally go and pay to £3 or whatever to get in on the Trent end. And it was hard to believe because, Liverpool were the big club and Leeds was still a big club and all that sort of stuff, Man U. And suddenly Forest are winning championships and then winning in Europe. And it was, the hype we have now around the club and the fanzines and the podcasts and the wall-to-wall coverage, it didn't seem like that at the time. Now, maybe my mind's playing tricks on me, but, if you think about the media that we had at that time, it was just the Nottingham Evening Post. So there'd be Nottingham Post specials or whatever, but, not many people read them. And there wasn't the TV coverage that you get now. So the matches, you had to go and see them if you wanted to see them. You had to actually be in the ground. I mean, Clough was a phenomenon. He had his faults. I'm never going to be someone who says he was faultless because I saw a few of them over the years. But he was an absolute football genius, and he was completely suited to the club in terms of he just took the club over. He decided who came in. He did the transfers probably at dodgy service stations with wads of money, but he dominated the club, and then we had that wobble in the mid 80s, and I stopped going for, if I'm honest, about 3 or 4 years ago. Life took over. I was in my early 20s. I was doing other stuff. I was obviously still always a Forest fan. I went to occasional games, but I sort of came back into it around 87, 88, when at Hillsborough saw that brilliant second Clough side with Pierce and all that, Walker, and then again, it came again under Frank Clark and that brilliant side 94, 95 in Europe, and I managed to get to some of the European away games in. I went to Malmo and I went to Auxerre, which I'd never managed to do in the 78 to 79 period because I was just that little bit too young and I'd no one to kind of go with. So I sort of saw the European days at home, but never witnessed them abroad. But thankfully saw us in Malmo and saw us in Auxerre.
That's amazing. Yeah, I apologize for switching gears, but I think one of the aspects of what you do, which is incredible, is your work as a councillor, as a city councillor. So what kind of, how did that come about in terms of your thought process, in terms of wanting to kind of serve the community in that way? And do you have a background in other things too? I'd be curious to know what your history is in terms of working life beyond what you're doing for the city council, because that's obviously very critical work. I'm just curious about the kind of history of that.
Yeah, I'm someone who didn't go to university, so I went into work at the age of 18. I worked in the civil service for many years in the lower echelons of the civil service. But I became a union rep, trade union rep at a very early age. And that sort of shaped my view of life. So sort of became a socialist and a trade unionist. And, you know, people talk about Clough. I mean, Clough supported the Nottinghamshire miners who were on strike, who were a minority. They were, you know, less than 20% of the miners in Notts were on strike, but he supported them, which was quite a controversial thing to do at the time. So he was an inspiration in that respect. But I was a trade unionist, and then later in life, I sort of switched jobs a bit. I went to work for Oxfam for a while as a charity worker, and then I came back into the civil service, and I ended my career with 10 years working for a trade union up until about a year or so ago. And I was always interested in politics, but said that if I was going to be a councillor, I only wanted to represent the area that I lived. I sort of felt that I didn't want to go and represent somewhere that wasn't where my kids went to school, and wasn't, you know, where I walked up and down the streets and went to the pub. So the area I live in at the moment, Wollaton, for many years I had Conservative councillors. And then a by-election came up. My mate said to me, "Oh, go on, you know, try and get the Labour nomination and see if you can get elected." And I did. And, you know, I've been doing that now for 12 years, and mainly as a sort of backbencher working on local issues. But for a couple of years, I was involved in stuff a bit wider, including trying to get the forest ground situation sorted, which has been a bit of a disaster over the years, hasn't it, if we're honest?
Well, you have been a voice from the council on the whole city ground saga. I mean, is there anything you can give us and tell us by way of an update? Because it's been to-ing and fro-ing, and plans here and there have been submitted and withdrawn, and it's got quite confusing. A good friend of ours, Matt Druitt, the architect, who you may have seen come on, has tried to shed some light on what we know from the public arena. He's an expert architect that can tell us things that we perhaps wouldn't have noticed from things that, as I say, that are made public. But is there anything you can tell us in terms of how things are progressing with the city ground?
Yeah, I mean, I'll try and do it briefly because I could talk for an hour on it. But I mean, 2019, I went to a presentation at the city ground about the new stand. I mean, that's how long ago it was, pre-COVID. And there was great talk about we were going to have this new stand. And then I think that involved the club getting a longer lease on the ground from the city council, because the Nottingham City Council owns the freehold to the land, but the land is actually in Rushcliffe District Council area. So their Rushcliffe District do the planning, and Nottinghamshire County Council do the roads around the city ground. So at one point we had 3 different councils who all had, you know, their toes in fingers in the pie. To cut a long story short, a longer lease never got signed for whatever reason. It was agreed and then changed and then not signed. But the option to buy the land for the club was always on the table, but I think it got lost in the discussion. So I sort of, when I was at a year where I was in charge of, you know, regeneration and stuff for the council, I sort of got that back on the table. And then about a year ago, it was agreed in principle to sell the land to the club. So that would in effect wash the hands of the city council with the deal. And it would now be down to the club to deal with planning. As I understand it, what the hold-up is now is that the planning committee of Rushcliffe Council has not had a meeting to discuss the planning arrangements. And I think the club, you know, if you're generous, the club would say, "Oh, we've done everything we've done. We're just waiting for Rushcliffe." Rushcliffe will probably say, "Well, we're still waiting for this or that bit of paperwork." So it's really hard to pin down. I saw some speculation the other day that they're trying to decouple the stand from maybe the apartments that they were trying to build, which was going to be offset some of the costs. But both of those would have to go to planning. So I'm hoping that, very soon the club or Rushcliffe will make a statement, because, fans want to know. We saw what happened when the owner flirted with Toten. The vast majority of the fans were opposed to that. They made it clear in the ground and outside the ground. And I think the redoing the City ground is the preferred option now of the club, certainly the preferred option of the fans. But we can't wait for years and years. We could get 40,000 fans in the ground if there were 40,000 seats. That's the reality.
I mean, I was going to ask you, how vital is it that the stadium plans are followed through on as soon as possible, regardless of what it is? Even if the decision was made, finally, we're moving away. Not that I don't think that's going to happen, and I don't think that's what people want, but something's got to happen. Something's got to happen quickly. I think that's really crucial, don't you?
I think it's crucial, because I think if we've been in the Premier League now for 3 years and we've had 3 years at 30,000 capacity, if we'd have managed to push on in that first season, we'd have had maybe a season where it would have dropped to 22 while we were, rebuilding a stand. But now we'd be at 40. And whatever year that we start the work, we're going to have a drop. But, there'll be a less away fans, and we'll just have to, put up with it for 9 months, won't we? It doesn't look like it's going to happen this summer, does it now? We've got an England international in June. Planning permission still has not been agreed. But the mood talk a few months ago was that they wanted to get the planning agreed at the end of this season that's just happened, and that they wanted to start the work maybe during the season. So there was some talk that they might build up from the back like Liverpool have done. Now, great if that can be done and we can get it done over the next 12 months. But you're right, it needs doing. There needs to be some certainty. And I understand the reluctance of the club to keep making announcements that then prove not to be, up to date. Because if they say it's going to happen and then planning stop it, who looks silly? Somebody does, don't they?
Yeah, for sure. So what about the blog? I'm curious to kind of talk about that a little bit, because it's great. It's excellent. What was the kind of genesis behind that? Obviously there's lots of different platforms, so I'm curious why that kind of came about, and what your desire was for that. Was it just kind of is it just a cathartic thing? Yeah, curious about that.
So this season has meant that we're all watching more and more podcasts, listening to more and more stuff, reading more and more articles about Forest. And one of the guys that I read a lot was the match reports from David Marples, who is a blogger. And I thought, I really enjoy reading these. Maybe I should write something myself. And it became as simple as that initially. And I thought, well, what have I got to say that's different to anybody else? So my first one in January, I wrote about what Forest in Europe would mean for the city. And so looking at tourism, looking at Trent Bridge and how we could improve the area around it, looking at how we could market Nottingham as a city, as a European city. And so there was a bit about, this is an angle I thought I might have something to say about. And the second one I did was mainly about what role fans have in any club. So I was a founder member of the Supporters Trust, went to the meeting at the Albert Hall in 2016 when we thought the club was being driven into the ground by Fawaz. And I'm a massive supporter of Forza Garibaldi, and went to one of their early meetings with Colin Barrett. So the second blog I wrote was about how fans are really important to the running of any club. But in both of those two blogs, I started to put a bit in about the game I'd just seen or whatever. And then as we were in such a high period of wins and excitement, I just started carrying it on virtually every fortnight. So like I say, I think I've done 15 of them now since January. Just finished did the one this week about the disappointment of Sunday. I'm probably take a break for, till the fixtures come out or something like that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about, are you going to continue next season? Now that you've got it going, and has it helped you? I mean, sometimes you've got so much going around in your head, you want to get it out. As Richard said, it's quite cathartic, and the podcast for us helps us do that. So, it's a way of getting your frustrations out on paper, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I'm a big social media user, so I do a lot of stuff on Blue Sky and X, but sometimes, a couple of sentences isn't enough, is it? And, that platform lends itself to angry shouting, and, you want to be a bit more considered. My son is 28, and I dragged him to Forest since he was 5, and he had 3 seasons in League One with me and all the rest of it. And now he's gone full circle. And, we were together at Wembley, and he's been at all the games with me, and we're both away members. And so we've come full circle with him. But to be honest, Sunday hit him harder than it hit me, because, he's never seen us in Europe. Champions League is like the holy grail, isn't it? And he was within our grasp, wasn't it? And I kind of think that the thing about the blog is just trying to put some perspective about what sort of season it's been, what sort of club we are. That it's, we're not Liverpool, are we? We're not Man City with the multi-millions, and we can bend the rules whichever way we want. So I wanted to kind of put some perspective in there and try and help my head around it, and maybe even some perspective for my son's generation.
We've talked extensively on Talking Reds about family. For us, I think it's at the heart of Forest, and Richard inherited Forest from his late grandfather, me from my dad, and so many other Forest fans will have done the same, and fans of all different kinds and all different clubs, right? I don't think it's exclusive to Forest. I mean, I will say that. But it's really interesting when you mention your son, who you kind of are given the Forest bug to, and you've been able to go, no, I've got an 8-year-old who I go to matches with. And for me, that, if he's not with me, then I almost don't want to go, because I want him with me, because it's that shared experience together, isn't it? Whether it's a good experience or whether it's a painful experience. So just wanted to kind of like get your thoughts on that and that connection that you've got, obviously, with, is it just your son that goes with you? You've got other children that are involved as well, other family members?
Yeah, so I've got 2 sons, but and both got dragged down from an early age. But my second son, when season tickets at age 11 started to go up a price range, I think at one point in the Championship or League One, they were virtually paying kids to go, weren't they? So my youngest son used to come along as well, but really he didn't want to be there. I knew he didn't want to be there. He's more of a drama kid. He used to go to drama on a Saturday morning. We used to pick him up and then take him to the game, and he was knackered by the end of the day. So when it got to age 11, he kind of gracefully moved away and just did more drama. But Liam kind of stuck with it, and he goes every week. He was the one that managed to get the away tickets for it, the away season tickets. That horrible day in June or whatever it was, in first year after promotion, where there was a mad scramble to become an away member. And I was online for about an hour and a half and gave up, because I just thought, right, they've all gone. I keep getting chucked out, blah, blah, blah. I was working from home at the time. I went upstairs and started working. And then I heard this scream from downstairs, and Liam, who wanted work that day, sort of just came running up, interrupted a meeting. I was online and said, I've got 2 away tickets. It was like completely bowled over. And so we spent 3 years going to away matches as well. You don't get to all of them because of the way that the tickets work out, and we're not in the 400 or the 800 or whatever. We're in the scrum with the rest of the away members. But I accept, I'm one of those 3,000-4,000 that get chance to get an away ticket, and it's been absolutely brilliant. And it is good bonding. Me and Liam talk more as a result of going on long car trips to Southampton than we would do if we weren't. And I do think it's important. My wife sort of tolerates Forest. She used to come when the kids were tiny, she said she used to come to take the kids to the loo, so I won't miss any of the game. But she's happy to watch a bit on telly now for big games. But I've always tried to take other people's kids where there's been spare tickets, because I look back to me at 14, I had no one to go with, and a bloke up the road who my mum knew used to go with his daughter, and they said, "Oh, Steve can come with us if he wants." And if he hadn't taken me for that first year when we won the league, I'd have missed all that, and maybe wouldn't have ended up being a Forest fan for life in the way that I have. So it's hard these days because there's very few spare tickets, but when there were spare tickets around in the Championship or somebody's not going that, I'd always say to people that I knew had kids, does your lad want to come with me and Liam? Because I want people to experience what we experienced.
It's amazing. And that's so true. Getting tickets is tough. Away tickets are even harder. I've been fortunate enough to go to away games since we've been back in the Premier League, as well as home games, and it's a different experience, isn't it, when you're in with the away fans?
Yeah.
And so it's great. It's a great story to hear about Liam bursting in and telling you got those tickets. Really, really good story. Thank you for that. I want to say thank you very much to those people that are joining us in the comments. Big Arms with us, and Steph and Brucey. If you want to say anything or ask anything, please do drop a comment. And we hope as well that you'll consider liking and subscribing to Talking Reds. You can find us on X, TikTok, all the usual places, Facebook, and so on. Please do give us a follow, give us a like, give us a review if you can. All right. We ask everybody who comes on, Steve, to put together their all-time Forest 11. And I know that you've had a very difficult task to do this.
Yeah.
Here it is on screen. Steve's Battling Reds. There we go.
Yeah.
I'll give out the team and then we'll have a chat about one or two. So Peter Shilton in goal. You've gone for a back three of Murillo, Des Walker and Nikola Milenkovic. You've gone with wing-backs, Stuart Pearce and Ola Aina. In your midfield, you've gone with Roy Keane, Morgan Gibbs-White, and then a front three of John Robertson on the left, Steve Stone on the right, and Stanley Victor Collymore centre forward. And as I always say, there are no wrong answers when it comes to picking your team. It doesn't have to be the best. It's the ones that mean the most to you. And the thing is, it's an evolving thing as well, because if I ask you this next year, it'll be different. It's an evolving thing. It's not fixed for life. It can change. And I think you did this previously elsewhere, and you didn't have any of the current members, I don't think, in that squad. And you've gone for 2 or 3 or 4 this time round. But I'm going to start in goal because you picked Peter Shilton, who would be my goalkeeper. He was my first hero. I always wanted to be Peter Shilton. I remember him leaving to go to Southampton, and that was the first time I remember feeling heartbroken as a young football fan. I think it was 82. I think he went, if I remember right, and I would have been 6 or 7 or 8 or something like that. So why did you have Peter Shilton in your goal?
I just haven't seen a technically better keeper play for Forest. I mean, we were built on defence under Clough, the 1-0 wins and all the rest of it, and he kept us in so many games. I don't know what it'd be like in the modern game with passing out from the back and all that sort of stuff. And I did have a wobble because I was thinking, if it's players that have brought me most pleasure, I'd have Samba in there for the sheer antics of that Championship year. And Sells has been brilliant, but I had to go really with who's the best keeper I've seen play for Forest for a consistent period of time. 3, 4, 5 seasons, and it's Shilton by a country mile.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. So into your back line, I mean, there's so many to choose from. The Larry Lloyds, the Kenny Burns. Des Walker, I think, speaks for himself. But you've opted with Murillo and Milenkovic. I mean, I'm the biggest Milenkovic fan there is, I think. So how difficult was it to pick that back line, and why did you choose those two?
Yeah, I couldn't leave one of them out and put the other in. Hence me going with a back three. And again, in terms of the same argument about heart versus head or whatever, I kind of would like to have put Michael Dawson in there because again, I think he was brilliant for us. He would have been brilliant at a higher level for us as well if we'd have ever been there. But Murillo, we know he's going to play for Real Madrid or somebody. I'd rather it be Real Madrid or Barcelona than bloody Chelsea or Liverpool, but he is going to play for somebody really big at some point. I hope we get another season or so out of him. But I think Milenkovic has made us this season in terms of leading the back line. That's why I voted for him for Player of the Year, just because I think he's just brought that level of authority at the back that we didn't have in the first 2 seasons. But you can't not pick Des Walker because I've never, again, gifted and quick centre-backs. Des was up there with anybody for club and country.
Yeah, for me, Des Walker was the best. Stuart Pearce again speaks for himself. It's always difficult because in midfield, I think we've had a really strong, high level midfield or a set of midfielders in our history. Yeah. Roy Keane and Gibbs White in the middle, and then you've got Ola Aina on the right hand side. I mean, I think he's brilliant. I think he's had a great season. So let's just pick one of them out. Why did you pick Roy Keane?
Again, I remember him coming to us in 88. He had 3 seasons from the age of 18 to 21. And you look at that period to come in from, in effect, non-league in the Republic of Ireland and to slot into a Forest side that was, doing well and going to cup finals and all that sort of stuff. He was absolutely brilliant. I mean, he would run. He would play anywhere Clough told him to play. I think at one point he played 8 or 9 games centre back because we had an injury crisis and Clough just said, play at the back, son, and he did. I don't think I've seen a more committed and good, skillful centre midfield player in my time. So he got it. Again, in terms of Forest legends, Chris Cohen to me is a Forest legend, but I couldn't pick him ahead of Keane and Gibbs White in that centre block because I went for skillful players that would grace any team, and I think Keane and Gibbs White do that.
And then I'm going to move you to your front line. So Steve Stone, I always thought was a fantastic player for Forest. Stan, I think, speaks for himself. John Robertson definitely speaks for himself. But I want to ask you about John Robertson because obviously we talked about you and your first kind of season ticket at Forest coinciding with that championship winning team and then into Europe. And John Robertson has largely been spoken about as Forest's greatest ever player. And there are an awful lot of living Forest fans that would never have seen John Robertson play. So from someone that did, from someone that saw it up close, just how good was John Robertson?
In a space of 10 yards, he was as deadly as anybody because he would... I mean, I used to stand in the old East Stand before it was seats in what is now the Brian Clough. In those 2 years where we won the league and then won the first European Cup. So I was on the side where he was kicking when we were kicking from the Trent end towards the Bridgeford end. And he could go past anybody, left or right, kick it left or right, and find a pass better than anybody. And for those 3 years, probably, I think he was the best player in the world. I really do. I mean, he's, obviously he was from Scottish, so he didn't play in terms of the internationals, probably the sort of quality that he should have played if he'd have been English or Spanish or whatever. But his ability to go past someone and to put the ball on someone's head or into space or whatever was absolutely brilliant. I mean, he wasn't quick, but over 5 yards he was quick enough to get past him because they didn't know which way he was going.
Yeah, I remember him from when I was very young. I can just about remember the second European final. I was born in 74, so by the time we won it in 80, I was 6. So I've got vague memories of my dad jumping up and down at the TV screen and all that kind of stuff. And then later on, so yeah, as I say, any team that we are fortunate enough to talk about from our guest is always going to be a good one. There you have it, Steve's Battling Reds on screen. Thank you very much for that, Steve. Okay, it's just about past the halfway mark, so let's have a quick break.
The Cheese Trader, based on Grape Lane in York, is a cheese lover's paradise. Home to some wonderful specialty cheeses, relishes and chutneys, and also with a fantastic street food menu. Try their loaded fries or posh cheese on toast. It'll be the best you've ever had. Owned by Forest fan Stu Freestone, the Cheese Trader proudly sponsors Talking Reds. Quote Talking Reds every time to get 10% off your order. The Cheese Trader and Talking Reds, the perfect cheesy mix.
Indeed. You know what to do, folks, when it comes to your cheese. Stu Freestone, the Cheese Trader, is waiting for your order. All the links are in the bio to this episode. Okay, I think we just about have time to get this underway.
The lightning round!
Yes, sir. All right. We're going to jump right into it, Steve. I think you're familiar with some of this, so we'll just get right into it. Favorite Forest player of all time?
Stuart Pearce.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. Passion, everything.
Everything complete, right? Had it all. What about what player in Forest history would you like to see on the current squad?
Robertson, probably, or Pearce. Yeah.
Yeah, can you imagine? Oh my goodness. I think they'd fit right in with the Nuno team, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
I bet Robertson would love that counter.
Yeah.
What about your favorite away or third kid? And I know you kind of came prepared for this, I think. Yes.
Yeah. So
very cool.
First season back in the Premiership, and the UNHCR logo, because we didn't have a shirt sponsor because Maranakis wanted more money than that somebody would give him. But I was really proud of the club doing that for half a season. It certainly beats betting companies and this, that, and the other. So, this is a good shirt for me.
Absolutely. What is your favorite Forest moment or memory?
Wow.
It's probably going to be a tough one.
It is a tough one, but I always, when people have asked me this before, I always say 2-0 against Liverpool in the European Cup. So we qualified for the European Cup. We drew Liverpool. Everyone was saying, "Oh God, we haven't even got a European side, and we're going to go out to Liverpool." And we were 1-0 up in that home leg first. And I know I've seen this on the telly as well to reinforce my memories, but I do remember it. Liverpool fans, and there was lots of them there, were singing 1-0 is not enough to beat us. And it was echoing from their fans. And we'd been 1-0 up in the game for quite a while. And I think with about 15 minutes to go, Colin Barrett scored the second. And the whole of the City ground started just going 2-0, 2-0, 2-0, 2-0. And it was absolutely incredible. We came out of that ground thinking, we were the best team in the world. And we probably were at that point. And it was a bit tasty behind the stand as it was as we came out. But that's a memory that no one will ever take away from me.
Not to deviate too much from this, but I remember when my first match and when my granddad and living in the United States, right, and experiencing American sports, there's a quality to our fans that I've never encountered anywhere, right? It's just incredible. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's that sort of familial thing, that family thing that Greg was talking about, but a community thing. But yeah, there's a definite sort of amazing sort of vibe about our fans that it's unparalleled. So that's incredible. And it was that 1-0 was definitely good for us this season, wasn't it?
Yeah.
They felt that at Anfield for sure. Yeah. If you weren't a Forest fan, this is a tough question, I know. If you weren't a Forest fan, what club would you support?
It probably have to be Notts County because I'm a Nottingham person, and I sort of think you've got to support your home team. And I've got a lot of Notts County mates who always take the mick when we lose in playoffs and all the rest of it. But I got a sneaking admiration for Crystal Palace if I had to go to a London team, but probably Notts County.
Oh, that's cool. It's a nice shout out. Apart from Brian Clough, who is your favorite Forest manager?
God. I think I've got to say Cooper. I know it didn't end great, but the way he took us up, the way he kept us up, and the way he bought in to the club and the fans, the things that he did behind the scenes that nobody really talked about, but we knew he was going out and meeting people and meeting fans groups and all that sort of stuff. I loved that time under Cooper when we were getting promoted and staying in the Premiership. So,
yeah, he's etched in history. I mean, that's a lot to endure, getting us up from the bottom of the Championship, getting us to the Premier League, and then keeping us there. It's pretty remarkable for sure. Yeah. If Forest could sign one player from a non-top 6 side, who would it be? So you just brought up Palace, could be Wolves, could be Bournemouth, could be any of those.
Well, I think that Matoma at Brighton, he's
difficult.
So I think he would fit right in our side as well. So,
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah,
he's got pace for days, good on the ball, good finisher.
Yeah.
All right, this is a tough one for me personally. I'm sure it is for you. Morgan Gibbs White, time to sell or desperate to keep?
I'm a softie. I'd keep him if I could. I know we'll get money for him, and I know we'll reinvest it. But he's in the first 2 seasons. First season certainly he was our best player. Second season, best with Murillo probably. This season he's still been bloody good, even though we've had loads of really good players this year. So I'd keep him for, if we could, for another season.
Yeah. And you referenced Stuart Pearce-Steeler. He's the guy that I probably most closely align, and not in terms of where he plays, obviously on the pitch, but just his passion, his energy, his desire to get everyone around him playing to their best level. Like, yeah, there's just a lot of intangibles with him too that I think are remarkable. All right, tough question: FA Cup or Champions League? So next season, we are all disappointed about, well, disappointed, just it's a little bit sad about them not getting to the Champions League, but there's always next year, and so forth. It's just a building block, right? So I know Greg loves to win cups. He's a guy who marks, success based off of winning trophies, which I understand that completely. So FA Cup or Champions League?
I'd probably say FA Cup as well, because I think there's something about winning a trophy and what that means to people. You look at what it's meant to Palace, you look at what it's meant to Newcastle. You look around the stadium and it talks about things when we've won things, and there's been a long, long gap, hasn't there? So whether that's winning the Conference League in Europe, the FA Cup, I think would be great to get that again. And Champions League will come, I'm sure.
For sure. Great answer. All right, last one. Forest win the Premier League, but then relegated into the Championship. For the next 25 years, would you take it? Now, you referencing League One, so yeah.
No, I wouldn't go back there. I mean, if you said go back for a year and bounce straight back up, but there's no guarantees on that, as we know.
No.
So everybody wants to win the Premier League, but we got to also recognise where we are as a club in comparison to the Man Cities and the Liverpools and their 60,000 stadiums and their unending money bags. So
yeah,
I don't want to go back in the Championship if at all.
Yeah, great answer. Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
I am so good at lightning rounds.
Awesome. Okay. If you could just take the ticker off, that'd be great, Richard. Thank you very much. I want to say thank you very much to Steph Wilkinson for the $20. She says, amazing interview. Steph has been a really big supporter of the channel for quite a while now, and your comments and your support has been always noticed. We're really grateful for that, and $20 to go into the pot really is a lovely gesture. Thank you very much indeed for that, Steph. All right. Okay. Steve, how do you sum up your emotions now the season is done? All came to an end on Sunday. It was all built up, and we know about the run-in, and I was not quite managing to get over the line. How do you sum up how you're feeling now, mate?
It's still hitting me, if I'm honest. I mean, I wrote a blog saying, we should be proud and we should move on, but I'm still having flashbacks to Murillo hitting the bar at Villa when it was 2-1, and has not beaten Leicester, and has not. But you can say not beating Bournemouth on the opening game. We were 6 minutes away from beating Bournemouth, and that would have done it. So, I went after the game. I was so pleased that I went back to the Nav after the game with about 8 or 10 of us who go to games, and we sat and we got drunk for a couple of hours and put in, chewed the fat and made the perspective of that we'll all be back in August regardless. And we'd have all been back in August if we'd have gone down. And that's the reality. We're Forest fans first, and the glory comes if it comes. But yeah, I mean, there is so many what ifs in there of this season, but we never lost more than 2 consecutive games all season. It's quite incredible, isn't it? We lost 11 games, but we never lost more than 2 on the bounce. So there was a lot of consistency across the season. And yes, people will say we were in the top 4 for 4.5 months, but
it's a 38-game season.
So the table doesn't lie, does it? Table doesn't lie.
No.
And we are where we are. We're in the Conference League. I don't mind if we play 14 games against part-timers from Shamrock Rovers and the Arctic Circle. If we're in Leipzig next May winning a trophy, I'll be there.
Well, look, I mean, it was last night that the Conference League final took place. I watched it with my son. Chelsea ran out 4-1 winners. And we looked at each other and thought, I want some of that. I've got hotels booked for Leipzig already for next year, as a lot of Forest fans have. Free cancellation and all that, because you just never know. Because it is a competition that we absolutely must feel like we have a good chance of going very deep in, if not final, if not winning it. So now that we know it is the Conference League for Forest, it could have been the Champions League, as we know. It could well have been Europa. And we would have taken that and ran to the bank with it. Thank you very much. And maybe I'm trying to polish a turd here a little bit. But is it better for us after all that it is Conference League? Those small steps, that building up to something? Because it's not the end. Us not getting into the Champions League this season doesn't mean that, oh, God, that's it. It's gone. This is just the start, isn't it? The end isn't here. This is the beginning, isn't it?
I think in terms of building as a club, it probably is right for us. I remember all that debate we were having in January and February about, Champions League and FA Cup and all that. And at that time thinking, well, maybe Europa League will be better for us if we finish sixth and stuff. But I think where we'll notice it is transfers. I think we'll probably lose a couple that we probably wouldn't have lost if we'd have been in the Champions League. And I think our ability to buy players that we need will be lessened because we're not in the Champions League. But as a fan, thinking we've got a chance to go deep into a competition and potentially win it. West Ham won it 2 years ago. Chelsea won it yesterday. This is a chance for us to win a European trophy, which in turn would get us into the Europa League. So that would be a second season in Europe, regardless of what we do in the Premier League next season, as long as we don't go down, which would obviously be a bit of a disaster. But yeah, I think probably it is good for us as a club.
Because it could have been one season in Champions League, get stuff, go out of it, and that's the end of that. Or it could be one season in Conference League, as you've just said, win that, and have another season in the European competition the season after. So the building blocks are potentially there. So, like I said, maybe you can't polish a turd, but you can roll it in glitter, as they say. Richard, thanks to you.
I don't even know how to follow that. Yeah. Who's your player of the season, Steve? I think you mentioned it earlier, and just kind of give us some attributes of why you kind of would choose that individual.
Yeah, I went Milenkovic in the end because of what he's brought in terms of the stability at the back, the leadership. I think he's been a captain without the armband. I think he's made Murillo a better player. I think he scored some goals as well. I think, to be honest, it could have been Sells, it could have been Woods. I even wrote an article for Miss Rolling in fanzine saying Aina because somebody had already bagstead the article on Milenkovic.
Greg.
So we have been blessed this year to think that it could have been one of 7 or 8 players. How many seasons have we been scratching our head thinking, who is it going to be? But I do think Milenkovic is a leader. I think he'll stay with us now for a period unless we get an absolutely ridiculous offer in for him. And I think that we will build around his leadership. And if we lose Murillo and we get somebody else in, I think he'll be able to work with whoever comes in with him.
Yeah, I think the age that he's at too, right? Because it's not like he's aged out in any way, shape, or form, but he's at an age where it's kind of a weird sort of period for wanting to sign someone for big money, right? Just because he's getting to that late 20s arena. Yeah, I'd love to see him in our shirt for many years to come, because one of the many incredible amounts of business we've done. And like Greg and I talked quite a bit about that position last year, and if we could just get 10% improvement on the points lost, from set pieces last season, what that would meant for us. That would have moved us up to 14th just mathematically last season. And look what it's done this season on both sides of the pitch too, which is incredible. And he's been at the center of that, literally and figuratively. Yeah. So that's a great shout out. Yep.
I was going to ask you which areas you think we might need to strengthen in. I know that it's very difficult possibly to answer that because you don't know necessarily who's going, but without kind of thinking about who might be going, thinking about let's imagine everyone stays, which isn't going to happen, obviously. But are there areas that you think definitely need strengthening, and which are they?
Strikers. I think we need 2. I don't much. Everybody loves Taiwo. I don't think you can rely on Taiwo anymore in terms of injuries, and ability to come on and change a game. And I mean, Chris Wood's been absolutely remarkable. 20 goals and the conversion rate he's got. But we all know he's probably missed another 6 or 7 goals that you kind of think, God, how did he miss that? 2 on Sunday, wasn't it? Where sort of half chances. And I just think he needs somebody else who can rotate with him, who can, even if he remains first choice, who can come on with 30 minutes to go, who could play in a European game on a Thursday night where he doesn't need to travel to Azerbaijan or whatever.
Who'd you like? Who'd you like? Come on.
I'd have Roy Delap. I'd go down and.
You did what I did. Me and Liam. I did that.
I always say Roy, but
so does Greg. It's all right.
I would drive down to Ipswich and pick him up. But I can't believe people like that are talking about going to Man U. I mean, they're not even in the European competition. I think
he's going to Chelsea. Chelsea have been given permission to speak to him.
I
mean, Liam's been given permission to speak to whoever he wants now by Ipswich, and Chelsea are moving in. So I think that he's going to Chelsea, unfortunately, because they need a striker as well. Jackson is very much a rough diamond. I think Nicholas Jackson could be a good player for them. He's had flashes of that. I think you're right. I called out Liam Delap, Steve, earlier on. One player that I called out to Richard last night. In a message, trying to get on board with the whole "who do we think we're going to sign" thing, because it's not, it's something I find it difficult sometimes to go, well, I would really like him or really like him. But I mentioned Strand Larson from Wolves, who scored 14 goals for them this season. He's got attributes I think could really suit us. He's quite similar to Wood in many ways. He missed a few sitters against us. He missed some other goals through the season. Don't know if you've seen much of Strand Larson. The only sticking point on that is that he's been on loan at Wolves this season, I think, from Celta Vigo. And so they've got an obligation to buy him. So, again, I'm not saying there's any interest there anyway, but it kind of feels like they're buying him anyway. So it doesn't look like he's going to come to us. Do you know what I mean? So that feels unlikely.
And they've just sold Cunha, haven't they? So he's probably going to be their main man next season. There was a guy at Southampton who was about 6'10" who came on and looked strangely quite good for about 5 minutes against us and in a couple of other games for them. But I think it was a Nigerian guy. But I think Forest scouts will find somebody from Germany or Spain or Portugal or Brazil.
Yeah, I've got quite a list, don't I, Greg? Already. Yeah, it's that sort of 20 to 25-year-old, because we're in a great position to find someone from those leagues, and especially like it when they've been in like these really competitive leagues like Bundesliga or La Liga, where they've actually had some pretty stressful competition to face, and if they've been successful, scored 10 to 15 goals in that, at a really reasonably young age, it might be at a good price point too, where it becomes a benefit for us. That was the worry, is if you get into Champions League, Marinakis or are they going to throw money at things and like Greg said, put us in a real dire straits if we don't get deep into the competition, that kind of stuff. But I just want to kind of cap off the questions talking about Nuno. So what are your thoughts on Nuno? Because you talked about Cooper, just in terms of what he's done for the club, especially this season. I know he endured a lot the second half of the season last year. But what are your thoughts on him in terms of, what are some weaknesses? What are some things you like about what he does for the club?
I have to admit, like everybody else, probably when he came in, I was about, is he the right person to come in? He'd come from Saudi, hadn't he? But then I sort of looked back at what he'd done at Wolves and thought, well, if he could do that for us, and he clearly has, got us to 7th. His interviews over the past few weeks have got a lot better. He used to be very monosyllabic than he after games, and you couldn't see any personality there at all. And different managers have different styles, don't they? And we'd had Cooper, who was very talkative, but he's sort of, like most people have warmed to him. I worry sometimes a little bit about substitutions and whether he gets them right and whether he kind of goes off people, because but you don't know what's going off behind the scenes there. So Sousa played a game, I think it was Everton away from the start, and looked all right, and then hardly kicked the ball since, Jota Silva, I always thought was all right coming on from the bench, but then seemed to have only been given like 5 minutes, even though his second half at Villa, almost got us back into the game. So I kind of wonder a little bit about his game management, but and I want there to be a plan B for when people find us out on the game plans that they seem to have started to find us out in the last few games. But I would certainly not advocate for change. Unless he's set on wanting to go, I would want another full season out of him. Absolutely.
No, I mean, Nuno for me has to be the next season, 100%. But do you think that possibly the run-in and how it didn't really go according to plan exposed any weaknesses in his abilities? I mean, I know you touched on his in-game management a little bit there, but when you think about home performances against Everton and home performances against Brentford and Leicester, I mean, in my eyes, that was 9 points all the way, and we ended up taking 1 point from them. So are there any weaknesses or anything that he needs to work on, do you think? Or do you think it was just a case of we just didn't have the squad depth and they just ran out of steam?
I think I've been thinking about this too much over the last 2 weeks, but, you can't legislate for some of your best defenders making mistakes at the worst possible times.
Right.
So the ball going under Murillo's foot on the halfway line that led to the Everton goal was so uncharacteristic for him. And then in the Leicester game, our best, most consistent defenders this season, Aina and Milenkovic, went for the same ball, didn't they? Neither of them got the ball, and they scored from it. So could Nuno have done anything different about that? Probably not, because you wouldn't have been taking those players off necessarily. Could he have brought other players on to win the game? Possibly, but who really did we have that could have done that? I don't look back at those games and think, oh, they were games that were really cocked up by Nuno not bringing Jota Silva on at half time or whatever. I worried against Chelsea that I probably would have started with Callum from the start. Mm-hmm. But I know that a load of people think, well, Sangara's been playing great recently, and it's he's really proven that he's undroppable. But I just think we needed to win that game. It was a one-off game. We needed to win it. Callum Hudson-Odoi can score you a goal out of nothing. I'd have played him from the start.
Yeah, it was a conversation we'd had on here as well. Okay, we're nearly out of time. I want to mention Steph's comment. She says at the start of the season, I just wanted to be at the top of the bottom. Then we overachieved and I got so invested in Champions League. Candidly, we don't have the depth. In hindsight, very happy where we are. I think that possibly sums up how many of us are feeling. And very well put, Steph. Okay,
clear your mind and answer the first thing that comes into your head.
It's that time.
Name that grandmother.
Here we go. Right, we're at the end just about. So here comes my little section. Steve, Marmite, love it or hate it?
Love it.
Good man. How am I cooking your steak?
Well done to the point of death.
Oh dear God, wash your mouth out. What's your favourite cheese?
Anything extra mature and smoky.
Good stuff. What's the best sandwich?
Boring egg mayonnaise.
Okay. New to this segment. What's your favourite film?
Casablanca, possibly. The Trial of Chicago 7 for our American friend. Great American film.
Very good.
Reds with Warren Beatty. I've got loads of them. I'll podcast on films if you want.
Okay, that's another podcast for another time. And finally, here it comes. What are your grandmother's names?
Well, Maisie, who died in 1978, and we called her Grandma Sis, but it's actually short for Priscilla. Sis Battlemuch.
That's awesome.
Again, died in the early 80s, so a long time since I had grandparents.
Priscilla and Maisie, two absolutely fantastic grandmother names. Thank you very much indeed for that, Steve. Okay, that brings us to the very, very end, or not quite, in fact, because there's one thing I want to share with you all, just to kind of sum up, because we are still in the week after the end of the season and in the last game, and we are still in a very reflective mood and thinking about what we've had in front of us for the last 8, 9, 10 months or whatever it was. So I just wanted to remind everybody of just what we achieved this season. First win in Anfield in 55 years. First time ever winning at both Anfield and Goodison in the same season. First win at Old Trafford in 30 years. First league win over Manchester City in 27 years. First ever wins at the London Stadium, the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, the G-Tech Brentford Community Stadium. Our first England international in 27 years. Our first Brazilian international ever. Our first Argentinian international ever. Our biggest league win in 34 years, the 7-0 against Brighton. Our first 20-goal top-flight goal scorer in 30 years, Chris Wood. League doubles over Manchester United, Tottenham Hotspur, West Ham United, Ipswich and Southampton. Our first FA Cup final, first FA Cup semi-final, in 34 years. 3 Manager of the Month awards and the nomination as Manager of the Season for Nuno. We had 1 player nominated for Young Player of the Season, Anthony Elanga. Chris Wood, Player of the Month for October. 2 players nominated for Player of the Season, Wood and Morgan Gibbs-White. We had Matt Sells nominated for Goalkeeper Save of the Month on one occasion. He also won the Golden Glove Award for 13 clean sheets, along with David Raya. That's a joint club record. 10 away wins. That's double the total of the 2 previous seasons. First Premier League team to double their points tally from a previous season. And first time qualifying into Europe for 30 years. Also, our under-23 team were the Premier League International Cup winners, and our women's team were National League champions and National League Cup winners. I mean, when you lay it all out like that, what can you say other than, my goodness me? Because it's 3 years to the day that we were at Wembley and we were praying that we would get over the line, Richard, and that we would get into the promised land. And now we're back in the promised land just inside 3 years. And it's been a topsy-turvy, turbulent time in those first 2 years. The points deduction, the everything else that we know about. When you hear all that kind of stuff, I've got goosebumps. How are you feeling with that?
I agree. I mean, there's a whole litany of statistical things that you didn't even have a chance to get into. You, I think, hit the best things, but just the improvement on the pitch in terms of what we do statistically is remarkable. And that can be attributed, and that doesn't even go to the, an intangible thing like the kind of culture that's been developed. I mean, I've never seen a football club. I've never seen a sports team with that kind of connectiveness and just love to play with each other and get each other, support one another and help each other be successful. It's just a remarkable outcome. But yeah, my goodness, man, what a list. How are we going to top that? I guess Champions League, I guess FA Cup, things of that nature, but win the Conference League, so that it can only go up from here, right? But at the same time, that is just a remarkable list of things that, collectively.
It's just the beginning, mate. I said it. It's just the beginning. It's on the way up. We're on the up. Steve, thank you so much for being with us today. It's been a real pleasure to have you with us and to go through a bit about your life and your work and your support for Forest. Any closing thoughts you'd like to give us before we go?
Well, just to echo what you've just said, Greg. I mean, incredible season, and let's grab the joy and park the disappointment, because you can't be anything other than joyful at the season that we've had. We've seen it home and away. Grab it, bottle it, take it into next year, and hopefully it's the start of a brilliant period for us.
Thank you very much, Steve. And thank you very much, Richard. We'll be back again very soon with another One With and some more updates in the close season. But in the meantime, you've been watching the One With Steve Battlemuch. We'll see you soon. Come join Greg and Richard right here on Talking Red.